Now, our guest today reached out to me as soon as I published the Be Queer, Do Terrorism manifesto, and they were like, Karlyn, we need to talk to you. And I was like, oh, yeah, about what? And they said, we're seeing a lot of this queer stuff show up in kids that we're working with and families that we're working with. And so it's just like, it's a nice coincidence. I mean, it's not nice, actually. It's horrifying and dystopian. But it's a good coincidence when different experiences come together and we have the opportunity to have a conversation about it. And, my first guest today should actually be no stranger to the people on this channel, but I have so many new people on the channel lately that I oftentimes don't exactly know who knows who or anything like that. Let me actually just get their pictures up on the screen so that you can see them. I'll go to their Twitter post where I posted this. There, here we go. Our first guest is a woman that needs no introduction. If you do not know who Gabrielle Clark is, you have not been around that long. And I will say Gabrielle Clark is someone I have known Gabs for a long time. We go way back. We were here before a lot of the so-called anti-woke activists, and we have survived after a lot of them have already dropped out. And for some reason, we just keep coming back and we keep doing this crazy thing that we do. Gabrielle Clark is not going to pat herself on the back, so I will pat her on the back for her. She filed the first ever lawsuit against critical race theory in public schools. This woman did what no one else was willing to do at the time, because there were a lot of people that were complaining about critical race theory. She was the first one to raise her hand and actually take that issue to court. And that was a news story that I broke that then ended up becoming national news when she filed the first ever lawsuit against critical race theory in schools. She also transitioned her fight over to her daughter because her daughter got socially transitioned in school to believe she was a boy. And so that was another legal battle that Gabs had. And in the course of this woman has done more to fight against gender ideology and critical race theory than almost anyone else in the country, but she doesn't get the credit that she deserves. Why? Because just like me, she doesn't play the influencer game. But we know the impact that she's had. She has been working with families who have had their kids succumb to queer ideology, to trans ideology for years. She has more practical experience on the ground than almost anyone. She has her own organization called Affirming Reality, in which she helps parents to deprogram their kids from the trans cult. And it's just amazing work that she does. And I'm so looking forward to her insight. And Dr. Nikki Johnson is also joining us. She works with Gab. She's a pediatrician, certified life coach, and mother who works as an educator, parent coach, and health policy consultant. And I'm so excited. Oh, and we got to get Nikki's picture up too. Hang on. I don't want to do Nikki dirty, but her Twitter account's locked, but there she is. And that's where you can follow her on. And so I don't want to delay it anymore. I want to bring these two wonderful ladies onto the channel. Hello. Hi guys. How are you doing?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for that intro. Thanks for having us.
I hope that wasn't too much, but I am really excited about the conversation today, and I'm really excited to have you guys here. And so you guys reached out to me. So I want to kind of start with that so you saw the queer manifesto and you were like, uh-oh. So what happened? What did you see in that document and what made you want to have this conversation?
Well, I mean, here lately, seeing all of the things that you have been putting out, it wasn't necessarily specifically that thing, but I follow all of this, and I'm usually ahead of the trends. And a few months ago, we were alerted to this very thing, with some parents that have come to us. Our clients started out when I started doing this a few years ago. All of my clients were parents of high schoolers and middle schoolers. And now almost all of my clients are conservative Christian, sometimes homeschooling households whose children have gone off to college and have transitioned after sometimes a month, up to a year or two in college, and they thought everything was fine. The parents thought that everything was fine, and they sent their kid to college, and it's not. And we're seeing even more disturbing things coming up because of the militant attitude of the children that are coming up now.
Yeah, one of the things that I latched on to Gabs for, the reason why I was drawn to her in the first place was because she did see the big picture of this being fully indoctrination. And this is something that I thought as a pediatrician, even as I watched the American Academy of Pediatrics put out these, their policy on gender affirming care back in 2018. I knew it was all a bunch of BS in full indoctrination, full ideological capture, and not anything medical at all. And no one was actually tackling that part of the problem at all. No one saw that. And that's the thing that I picked up about Gabs. I ended up interviewing her when I was writing for a couple of other nonprofit organizations and doing medical director work for that kind of thing as an independent consultant. And people still shunned it. People in the medical community, health professionals, mental health professionals were not only, kind of dogging her for not having any scientific credentials or medical credentials, but they were basically saying you don't have any evidence that this is here. But nobody, even the people who have all the big credentials, had any evidence that any of it was scientific. We know it isn't. We know it's all a bunch of crap. But no one is really willing to call out the fact that this is a social engineering project that is happening, and kids are being drawn to this because they aren't giving other appropriate, healthy coping mechanisms by their parents. And it is affecting every single family in our country, in the Western world, for this very reason. And Gabs is right. I actually joined her for a year as an apprentice, observing her, trying to see how the program worked. And then I was also studying to get my coaching certificate as well, because I wanted to help. I wanted to be a part of the solution. And the majority of our clients had young children, young adolescents. A couple were sprinkled in that were college age. But now the majority of our clients that we've gotten as we began to work together as partners at Affirming Reality are all college age kids. We have two that came to us and said their kid went off to college and a week later called them and said, I'm trans.
Wow.
It's just like, and these are conservative Christian families, upbringing, full-fledged on. Some of them pulled their kids out and homeschooled them, traveled throughout the world, isolated them from the things that they thought were going to hurt them and indoctrinate them, except for the internet, by the way, which is the major culprit that people do not realize. Yep. And that is what we're seeing right now. This is our group. And our when you put out your Substack about this manifesto, highlighting the fact that this is a targeted scheme to transform human nature and civilization, this goes with every single thing that we've been saying about this, and other people are not willing to tackle at all. They're not even willing to deal with it. And so our job at Affirming Reality, what we do as coaches is we're coaching parents to actually regain their authority in their parenting roles, so they can capture their kids back, so we can reclaim the culture here. And that's what we're doing. We're not promoting laws or trying to push any changes in terminology or diagnosis codes or anything like that. We are dealing with the cultural problem, because that is the root of the issue.
I want to pick up on a couple of things that you just said that I think are really interesting from my perspective. And the first is that it is a bizarre thing to me that people do not understand this as an ideology. And perhaps it's just that I've had my head just specifically in this area for so long that it's just like, of course, this is an ideology. This is not about a medical thing. And in fact, the Queer Manifesto, the Be Queer Do Terrorism Manifesto, if people actually read it, it actually specifically says they are against the medicalization of children, which is a weird thing, right? They actually blame all of the medicalization of kids' problems on doctors pushing capitalism and profit motive over actually treating patients. And so even the ideology itself puts it in opposition to, like, we actually don't think people should be medicalized. If they want to be medicalized, fine, but like we don't necessarily think that that's a part of what the ideology is. And I think that there's just like a refusal to go beyond the surface level of a lot of people to really understand, where did this ideology come from? Because I'm writing a book about it right now. And basically I've been able to trace this back to the 50s. I've been able to trace this back to like communist indoctrination and activism in the 50s. It started to really explode in the 60s with the Stonewall riots and the Compton's cafeteria riot. In the 80s, you had the queercore movement within the punk community. The queercore movement was a movement within punk subculture that was trying to, they were playing around with gender norms and stuff like that. This is where the idea that gender is a spectrum comes from. I absolutely believe that Judith Butler was involved in that community when she was younger, which is what informed her ideas about gender performativity and stuff like that, because it's just all the same ideology. And then you get into the late 80s and the early 90s, you get the ACT UP movement, which was the first militant queer activism movement around the AIDS epidemic. They were trying to get politicians to basically say the word AIDS because a lot of them didn't really want to. And this is where militant queer activism was born. But that kind of leads to another point you made about the internet, which is the way that I'm able to kind of track a lot of this stuff is through their zines, their propaganda, the things that they were creating within their subculture and distributing to each other. And I've been undergoing this huge project of like, I have thousands of their zines in a Discord like that I have set up purely to archive all this content. And I have these zines going back to like the 60s or 70s. So they're explaining their ideas and their beliefs and all that. So there was so many zines created in the 80s, so many zines created in the 90s. In the 2000s, we start seeing zines die off a little bit. Well, what happened? The internet happened. And all the stuff that they were doing on the zines went to Tumblr. And so we started seeing just like a really sharp drop off in like the amount of actual physical zines that were being created in the 2000s because they were doing all of this stuff online. And I do think like going back to like the old Tumblrs, and being able to try to find some of that information now, that is where a lot of this ideology got incubated. And I think that this is where it started getting really delivered to young people online. And at the same time, it started going into the K through 12 public schools at some point where they started teaching kids that gender was a spectrum, doing drag queen story hour to teach them that they could change their gender, like changing an outfit, stuff like that. And that's where this starts. It starts with like that golden nugget. And the Queer Manifesto is all about this, about the idea that gender is not a real biological concept. It is something that can be shifted. It's something that can be transformed or transcended. And when kids get into this subculture, it's one of those things where it's like, when you start reading the stuff in this subculture, you understand it. It's like, this is like the stuff that would blow your hair back when you were younger. These crazy, wild ideas about how the world worked that you never thought of. And you're being told this is liberating. This is freedom. This is rebelliousness. It's like that new state of rebellion, except this time they're becoming violent and militant.
Yeah.
So I'll throw that out there for a response.
And also engaging in extreme maladaptive coping strategies, and self-harm and just, delusional thinking, all of that stuff. I mean, even back before they had some actual things that were relevant, right? That were, I would even say, positive in some respects. But now it's not that. It's completely made up. It's like turned into, this crazy, sex and death cult, this nihilism that they're all exhibiting. Whereas before, I think there was a little more nuance to the movements, in the 80s, in the 70s, 80s, and even in the 90s, as rebellion. But now it's really turning everyone into nihilists and not looking forward to anything, and they have nothing to look forward to except for their own demise and their own deaths, and they're getting this head start by tearing up their bodies and throwing themselves into these violent protests and things like that.
Two quick things on that, and Nikki, I definitely want to get your opinion on this as well. But so in that queer manifesto, they actually talk about the mental health profession, and one of the things they say is things like what was it, like dissociative disorder or like psychopathy. They're saying these are made up things to criminalize queer minds and stuff like that. And so again, it's like another example of like they think that capitalism is pushing these labels onto them through like the medical profession to like try to criminalize their ideology and stuff like that, which I thought was really interesting because they're basically saying like, yes, these things describe us, and the only reason that you think that these disorders are bad is because capitalism has told you they're bad through the profession of psychology and like psychiatry and things like that. On a little bit of a lighter note, and I think both of you might appreciate this to a certain extent because we're all people of a certain age. Do you know who was one of the first people to push not the idea of non-binary onto the general public in the 80s?
Prince,
yes, but I'm actually yes, but that, he pushed it in dry. But there was one that was even better for me. Do you know who it was?
Pop culture.
It was
Billy Idol. Well, not Billy Idol.
Not even. No,
if
not
you
even.
tell me Michael Jackson, I'm gonna scream and run out the room.
Okay. No, it's not a musical. No. Do you know who it was? It was Sally Jesse Raphael.
Okay,
it was Sally Jesse.
I can see that. I was gonna, it was either her or Oprah. Okay.
Yes.
There's an old episode of Sally Jesse talking to a non-binary person. Yep.
Yeah, I would say that. And what was that? Jenny Jones. They were. I mean, there was a lot of that kind of thing going on at that time, and it was. I mean, well, like you've been going at and looking at a lot of the academic studies, you know, on this stuff. I have been binge watching television shows and sitcoms and watching old movies and seeing how this has evolved over the decades. If you watch, and I'm not kidding, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, but if you watch The Love Boat,
no,
their second episode was John Ritter basically stalking a woman, dressing up as a woman to get in and stay in a suite with another woman so that he could continue to stalk a different woman. I mean, that was the second episode of the first season of The Love Boat. And there's all kinds of stuff in there. There's a episode about communism where they have a state representative from Russia, you know, and how she's constantly bashing everything in the United States, and they romanticize everything about Russia on there. I mean, it is all straight Marxist, communist, you know, all of this, everything that we're talking about right now is in every episode. They even have an episode where a girl wanted to be a boy. It was Laura Ingalls. Laura Ingalls, I think she played the character. Yep. From The Little House on the Prairie. She played the character that she wanted to be a girl. She wanted to be a boy because she didn't like being a girl, and she attempted to be more girly because she liked this boy, and it turned out poorly for her. And it was just this whole thing. She went by a different name. She went by a boy's name. Her parents affirmed it, all of it, the whole thing. I was shocked at seeing how long this has been in our culture.
Listen, we found like, this is several months ago. We have to go back and find this website again, but we actually found a website that has all these old documentaries from like the 90s and the early 2000s, like the stuff that you would see on like a made for TV thing or something like that. And if you go back, like they were doing queer activism in these episodes. We watched one of the older episodes, and it's like it literally has a queer activist that we still see today show up all over the place.
Wow.
But them very like much younger back in college when they were doing queer conferences and having all this stuff. And it's like, this is 1999. It was the year I graduated from high school. And it's like, when you start realizing how long some of these ideas have been around, going back to the idea that this is an ideology, this has been permeating our culture, just seeping into it slowly for decades and decades and decades. And no one noticed because it was just like, oh, it's just a comment on an episode of The Love Boat, or it's just a weird guest on Sally Jesse who said there was no gender. And it's like, you look back at it now, you're like, holy mother F. But like,
it was introduced in multiple places, and then gradually we started to accept some of it. Just think about the whole, think about the gay male stereotype in a lot of our sitcoms and movies, who became, you know, girlfriend, you know, and everybody just sort of gravitated, and conservatives were even doing it, right? Like people were saying, using that language to describe the gay male. And that's how it works. They sprinkle a little bit here and sprinkle it everywhere, and then all of a sudden it's a part of our culture. So but there is an agenda. There are people who actually think this stuff up and come up with it, and people don't want to realize that. But so
and it all has a purpose. It all has a purpose. Everything they're doing has a purpose and a reason. I just want to do a couple super chats real quick. Thank you, No Mayo, for being a member of the channel for 10 months. So happy to have you here. We appreciate you. Jetty's getting inky with it, says, Biola, a well-known Christian college, has been getting called out for some of this stuff lately on X. They've changed their website to acquiesce to complaints, but there's still a lot of questions. Like, I mean, we see this over and over again. Even the so-called like conservative colleges, they still allow this stuff to happen because they think they need to in order to be a good person, or it's just academic freedom or stuff like that. Jetty's getting inky with it also says Nip Tuck covered almost everything we see today back in the early 2000s. Back then, we just thought it was Holly weird stuff, but now it's so clear what it was all about. And then Murphy's Pool just says Gabs.
Hey, Murphy's.
That's awesome. I mean, and then the other point is churches. So Christians have relied on the church and the word of God to be the sole authority on this. Now I'm speaking as a Christian, and and I've seen people try to use Christian doctrine to excuse this. And there are specific sects of Christianity that allow this to happen. So it has infiltrated every single cultural institution in our society.
Fun fact, Nikki and I were denied entry we were denied entry into the United Methodist Church right across the street from SCOTUS. When we were at the we both gave our testimony for the Scormetti case, and we were there when it was being heard, and we needed to use the ladies' room, and we were denied entry because we were not on the right side. They told us to go to the Lutheran church.
Yep.
Wow.
We walked up. Gab posted this on her. She posted this on her feed. I had a GoPro on when we were going, and I had to use the bathroom really bad. I was actually a speaker at the rally, and we went to try to go to the rally. People were going in and out of this church. I'm like, oh, it's a church. They're going to let people go in. It's cold. There's no bathrooms nearby, right? And no. Politely asked to go down to the Lutheran church down the street.
Yep.
Wow.
No transphobes allowed. Yeah,
that's funny too, because we've seen the Methodists popping up at some of the anti-ICE protests. Actually, the Lutherans as well. Everyone's popping up at the anti-ICE protests. We watched one from Chicago like the other day. It was like you got the Catholics, the Unitarian Universalists, the Methodists, the Lutheran, the Episcopalians were there. Like they were all there singing and praying for the illegal immigrants, but they won't let you guys use the bathroom. That's really godlike.
They're and I hear, and I understand Christians, how they, what they are trying to really accomplish with this and trying to bring purpose to people's lives and all of that stuff. But I tell Christians all the time, you want to bring Christianity, you want to bring God back into the schools because you think that that's where it's failed, but you can't keep this stuff out of your own churches. So
exactly.
what are you trying? And we now have laws here in Texas where chaplains are supposed, you can have a chaplain. The school district can choose a chaplain to, work in their schools now. And I was mortified by that because, not as an atheist, I was mortified by that because I'm like, y'all, they're not going to choose some evangelical. They're going to choose an Episcopalian, like that chick that chastised Trump and all of, Trump and all of those. At that I don't even, I guess it was a funeral. Was it a funeral? I don't even
Church
remember.
service, I think.
Yeah,
Church service.
Service, and she was chastising Trump about illegal immigration and about gender affirming care. I mean, that's who they're going to choose, and it will be almost impossible to get them out once they're in. And I tried to use the military as an example, but they didn't want to listen. But there are a lot of our service people who had transitioned while they were in the military, and a lot of it was through counseling, if you will, from their spiritual leaders that they met
Wow.
in there. And a lot of people don't want to believe that, because they especially Christians, they say, well, you can't be a Christian and think this way. And I'm like, honey, the Pope is a Christian. I mean, if you want to, if you want to call a Catholic a Christian, but there are plenty of religious leaders who are okay with this. They're having drag queens in their churches, dancing up and down the aisles. Are you insane? Are you not paying close enough attention? And so it really is hard to try to make people seriously understand how much of this has spread in so many different areas. And even go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought, please.
Even when we talk to parents or talk to people about social transition is a bigger problem than they think it is, because it's not just funny clothes and nicknames. These people believe it. They're willing to risk their lives for it. And they say, oh, no, that's the people who are on hormones. If you look at the spree killings and the all of those mass shootings and things like that with queer identifying people, the vast majority of those people are not on any kind of hormones. And they say, well, if it's not the hormones, then what is it? And I'm like, honey, they're talking about cutting their dicks off with no hormones. Do you think that they won't get violent? You think that transition or die means transition or kill themselves? No, honey, that means transition or fight and kill somebody else. Mm-hmm. Like this is what their doctrine, this is what their ideology is telling them that they must do in order to survive.
Yeah, and without getting into the whole controversy over Charlie Kirk's death, even if you believe and read the manifesto of his alleged murderer, this person is an ally and speaks very much like the other allies in this community, and doggedly protecting the people, who have this type of ideology and this way of thinking about themselves. So this truly has turned into something violent. There are still separate sects that are mainly sort of into the fetish and the fetish part of this. But it's fully embedded within Communist Manifesto, as you wrote in your Substack. This is all clear. It's all clearly part of this path. And then while we're talking about the church being part of this indoctrination too, I responded earlier today to a post from the Pope that was urging or trying to force Western nations to take care of the poor, when that really is, if you believe in Christian doctrine, you're believing that is our responsibility as Christians to take care of justice for the poor as us individuals with our own generosity. So if you can't believe that the church is also indoctrinating towards this particular queer agenda, but you can see that the church is indoctrinating towards a communist agenda, then you have to open your eyes to see that this stuff is there and being accepted and brought in.
I think there's many, many different things going on, and maybe we can have a conversation around those different things. And I want to make sure we get back to the college stuff at some point too, because that's another thing I'm really interested in. But I want to say a couple things. Number one, if people don't believe that queer ideology is in the church, it's a matter of they're not paying attention, because you can go on YouTube and literally just search queer church or queer God or queer theology or whatever, and you will get a ton of videos of presentations being done in churches by queer activists. And so people can go and see exactly what they're teaching in churches. We've watched many of them on this channel. It's all publicly available information. So anyone who doesn't believe, and it's in every church, by the way, and people think the Catholics are immune. No, they're not. No, they're not. No. They've been trying to queer the Catholic Church for a while. It may be going a little bit slower than the Methodists or the Lutherans or any of that, but they're still doing it there. So that's not true either. And so definitely people should look into that. I also want to say around the whole the mass shooter thing, I actually think there's multiple different ideologies going on, because my position, and people can agree with me or not, I do not believe that any of the mass shooters lately that have been quote unquote trans are actually part of the queer Marxist left, with the exceptions of the ones that were shooting up the ICE facilities. I think that they absolutely were. They were in Antifa. They were on the far left. But when I look at the Catholic Church shooter in Minneapolis, or I look at the even the Trump assassin that they're now saying was when I look at the Charlie Kirk assassin, I don't see them as being part of the queer Marxist left, because they were not using language and symbology that was consistent with that ideology. And so I also think there's another separate thing emerging that we don't really have a hand, and maybe you guys can have more insight on it than I do, but the whole furry thing, there's a lot of sexual fetish stuff going on the queer Marxist left, and that's very true, but it's always sexual fetishes related to power dynamics. It's like BDSM. It's like leather and bootlicking and all that stuff. And so that's but they're doing it as a political act, which is bizarre, but that's what they do. Furry has never been part of that. Now, furry, so I don't know what the connection is with all the furry stuff going on, but it seems to me to be a separate thing from far left militant queer activism. And then you kind of have this third category over here, which is autogynephiliacs, and it's just a pure sexual fetish and why they're doing it. Do you guys agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
I agree with that. I think there's a little bit of overlap though in some of them too. I would say there are certainly some autogynephilic males who are dipping their toe into queer Marxism, and and bouncing back and forth. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it's so hard for the normies to really understand completely how it all shakes out and how it all goes. Now, what you said about what we're seeing in this category that you're not 100% sure of, that is a lot of the times just rebellion, and teenage rebellion or childish rebellion. And they're trying very hard to rationalize their radicalness, if you will, or their radical side. And so they're not exactly really ready to go out and, participate in the queer Marxist movement, but they are getting there. They're working their way to that place. And that is where we try to get them. That's where we try to reach them before they've gotten to that place. And we encourage parents to reach out to us at affirmingreality.com so that we can help them bring those kids back before they get to the shooter stage, or the queer Marxist stage, because I think that there's that place is a limbo to this more extreme ideology.
And that makes me make the point that this phenomena that we're seeing in adolescence, and the reason why we see this in adolescence is because their natural course of development wants them to be rebellious, right? That is a natural tendency where that is happening, and that's okay for parents to see that. The problem is parents aren't giving them alternatives that are healthy ways to cope with the reasons why they want to be rebellious, right? Most kids want to be rebellious because they want to show some independence from their parents' way of thinking, the rules that are in their family and their house. They want to be their own person. And if parents aren't guiding them and steering them towards a healthy way to demonstrate that and allowing them some degree of autonomy, the people out there who are ready and willing to accept them into this ideology and radicalize them towards a violent extremist lifestyle are right there, and they're ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
So the parents need to recognize that piece of it. And I think that's one of our struggles too with coaching, is that oftentimes parents can't really see the difference between what is normal adolescent behavior then and what is the real heavily indoctrinated trans cult stuff. And that's a big challenge. And one of the ways that we tease that out is we try really hard to get to know the families. That is a big part of our coaching program. We spend a lot of time getting to know individual families, because even though this is a common phenomenon that we're seeing culturally, it still affects families differently, and their dynamic changes depending on how their family normally, what the culture of their family is, what their socioeconomics are, where they live, all of that stuff. We have to tackle that individually. How the parents relate to one another, how the parents are, there other siblings that are involved, how the parents are relating to them, how the other siblings are relating to the trans identifying kid. Are the rest of their family members accepting and affirming and doing all this stuff? There's so much to this. There's so many layers to this. And that's what makes us unique, is we're willing to tackle that and willing to give everybody willing to learn everybody's individual family dynamic, and then try to tackle these issues and help them sort through what is normal adolescent behavior that you need to steer towards a healthy, mark and allow to happen, versus what is trans cult dangerous, radical behavior that you need to pull them completely away from, type of stuff.
Yeah. And I want to go back and go into that a little bit more in depth, because, one of the things that I always hear from people is, oh, Karlyn, I don't put my kids in public school, and so they're never going to see this stuff. Or, people are convinced, and I know that this is like, Gabs, you're going to like flip your lid. I live in a red state. We don't do that here. It's like, and you guys are having experiences where you're working with families that did pull their kids out of public school, and then they send them right off to college, and boom, they're queer. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, look, both of us live in a red state, first of all.
Yeah.
And we see this stuff in our red state.
Nikki went to the colleges, so she can tell you all about what you see right when you walk in the door.
Oh my gosh. So let me I just went, my oldest daughter is a college freshman, and we went to a bunch of liberal arts, private colleges on our tours. New York, Pennsylvania, kind of, close-ish to home. And so, of course, those are pretty liberal states, but there's some in Ohio as well. So that's where I am, and I'm in Ohio. And let me tell you, one of the schools that was formerly an all-girl school, I walked into the campus and was there 30 minutes before I realized I had not seen one single male, except for someone in the admissions office who was an obvious male. Everybody else who was male was a female cosplaying as a male on this campus. Every single one. I kid you not. And my daughter didn't even notice it. That's how, it just wasn't something that was on her radar at all. And I knew instantly, you ain't going to this school, girl.
And she texted me all the time.
We were like, oh no, this ain't happening. But and this school was also very, very, encouraging of their students becoming activists. It was very obvious, and it was, on the tour, there was walls and murals there for activism, that they were allowed to post their opinions about things. And we asked, on the tour, oh yes, we are highly encouraged by our professors to become activists. So it's straight out there. Every single college we went to, for the most part, had a non-binary bathroom, even though, it was just a single bathroom and anybody can go in. It's just kind of stupid to you just call it the unisex bathroom, but you got to call it, the all-inclusive bathroom.
The ones that I hate are like, so I once went to this event, and sorry to interrupt, but I once went to the first event that I ever went undercover at actually was at Hampshire College in Massachusetts, which is super, super lefty. And they had transformed all the bathrooms into gender like neutral bathrooms. And so it's like, you get up to like where it used to be the men's and the women's room, and you don't know which is which. And then you accidentally walk onto the men's side, and you're like, oh no, no. I'm not going on the men, because the men's side still stinks, even if it doesn't matter. Like, the men's side will always be the men's side. And then you go into the women's side, and everyone, of course, is going into the women's side because it's much nicer than the men's side. And then you come out and you see a guy in a beard standing there. It's like, it's the most bizarre thing in the world.
It is crazy. And
that's how
the only other thing that I can tell you is the dorm situation, the dorm and the shower, sort of situation. So they'll tell you that they have single sex dorms or co-ed dorms. They'll allow you your child still has to get permission to have a co-ed roommate.
That's crazy.
Yes. And so if you give them permission to have co-ed roommates, you are giving them permission to have somebody trans in their room with them. So that's really what that's all about. And so any parent who is willing to sign off on allowing their child to live in their child first away from home in a co-ed situation, and not like, college dorms now are a little bit better. They do offer a little bit more privacy than what they did. They're more kind of like, some of them are more like apartment buildings than others, but some of them are still very traditional. You got a loft and your roommate is underneath you or above you, and you're sharing the bathroom pretty much. So you're allowing your kid to go off and be in a co-ed situation with a perfect stranger from anywhere all over the world. So and parents are signing off on this. They're thinking it's okay because they're thinking it's cool, and they're being supportive because they are supporting, trans people, and, right. And being inclusive. But no, one of the things that part of this culture is the kids who are fully indoctrinated, who believe that they are truly the opposite sex. They still have sex with the opposite biological sex, and they can get somebody pregnant, or you can get pregnant. And so it is, these kids are, I don't know, the indoctrination is heavy, and the lack of the ability to grasp reality for people who are full on into this indoctrination is very alarming. That's there. And so,
yeah. And also add this on too, because and Gabs, I want to go to you next to see what you have to say about all this. But like, one of the things that I'm working on through the Center for Left-Wing Studies is I want to do this project called the Gender Cult, where essentially I'm monitoring all of the different research centers at colleges and universities all over the country where all of this crazy stuff is being produced. So it's not just like about the academic programs or even the clubs. It's like that, like Columbia University has like a dozen different research centers just focusing on queer and gender ideology and pumping out these papers and all of this bullshit research. They do seminars, they do workshops. Obviously, that's open to all the students at the university. A lot of them are still teaching this stuff in classes as part of like a general education requirement. So I'm on all their mailing lists. And of course, like the mailing lists that I was the first ones to get on was like the Ivy League schools and stuff like that, when Trump was going after all of them and saying, fining them tens of millions of dollars for teaching this stuff, making them promise we won't do it anymore. And then the Trump administration and all their surrogates declared victory. We got woke out of colleges because they fined all these colleges tens of millions of dollars, and they pinky swore a promise that they were never going to do this again. They're all still teaching this, and I know this because I have the emails in my inbox. Like Columbia, I think they're hiring like an assistant professor of gender studies right now. It's like this stuff is all still happening. It's happening out in the open. And conservatives think that they won because Trump fixed the problem, but in fact, nothing was fixed. It's everything is going on that was going on before, and it's the kids that are caught up in all this because they don't know any better. They're going to these places where they've been told, you're going to be taught how to be, like this is college is a rite of passage. You have to go to this. This is what you do to be an adult in the real world. They trust the people they're being told to trust, and those people are messing with their heads.
Yes. And they are, and it's like, this is one of, so when Trump got elected, I was I was glad, but at the same time, I knew that the repercussion would be that our kids were going to end up moving on to this next phase. So gender transition as in childhood, as a minor was going to decrease, but a lot of these kids were going to wait until they turn 18 years old, go off to college in a state that where Medicaid pays for it, or they can get it for free from Planned Parenthood, or cheap from Planned Parenthood, and then they would and then they would
student health plan.
Yeah, or their student health plan, and surprise their families at Thanksgiving. And that is exactly what happened. And I did my level best to try to warn people that was what was going to happen. And a lot of people would say, well, once you become an adult, you should be able to do what you want to do. But the problem with that is that a lot of these people are not finding the satisfaction that they thought, and they're finding this new purpose of radicalization and becoming more militant and becoming more part of the Marxist communist agenda, in order to satisfy their wantingness to have a purpose. And it is scary. And no, this stuff is still I live in Texas. Okay. I live in Texas, and this stuff is still in the colleges in Texas. They're still teaching this stuff everywhere in the colleges in Texas. And I'll go you one better. If you go to any university in this country, I will guarantee you that in probably 80 to 90% of them, there are gender clinics within 5-mile radius of each and every one of them, because because the universities preach it, and then there's always somebody close by to help you realize your gender dreams. And so it's like, we haven't done anywhere near enough to get this sex and death cult out of our kids' minds. And it's going to create a bigger problem down the line. And, even now, conservatives, they got this, new study out that says that fewer and fewer people are identifying as queer, as LGBTQIA, whatever, in the colleges. And I'm just like thinking to myself that that's not what I'm seeing. That's not at all what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that they're hiding it in a lot of places. Number one, and number two, they're taking the medications without telling anyone, and they're not reporting to their colleges that this is what they're doing, especially if they don't want their parents to know what they're doing. So, and there's study abroad programs that are taking them to other countries to do this. And, I've already met one parent whose child went on one of these to Britain and denounced his citizenship and just stayed. And so,
wow.
Yes. And it was, that was really devastating. And they have since started communications again, but excuse me, he's already renounced his citizenship. So, and he's become a British citizen. So, I don't know how that's, I don't know if she'll ever be able to get him back. And I really do try to encourage parents to take this seriously. But even here in Texas, we've had clients. I've had clients come to us who live in Texas who think they could just wait it out, or they can just, or they can just, homeschool or something like that. There was a guy in Austin, he would reach out to me every now and again and tell me about what was going on. And I say, well, get on the program. Let's get you on the program. And he was resistant. every single thing that I told him was going to happen happened. And now, now it's a problem, a real problem, a bigger problem than it could have been. I really do. I really do hope that in the future, more people will take this seriously, because there's no such thing as watchful waiting anymore. That may have been something that people could do, a decade ago, or even 15, 20 years ago. But it's because it is so inculcated in our entire society. There's no more watchful waiting. You have to actively desist and detransition your children so
Absolutely.
that they normal and healthy lives.
Yeah, and I just want to pick up on something, and Nikki will then go to you. So I just want to pick up on something you said, guys, because I think a lot of people, I get comments all the time when people who are new to this and they're just starting to learn about it. They think that the left is just crazy and making stuff up all the time. They think that, they're just like, it's a new crazy thing that they've just invented out of nowhere, every single day of the week. And what I try to tell them is the left is actually incredibly consistent about what they do. This is a very predictable phenomenon that once you know the different stages, you can say this is going to happen and then this and then this. And it's super predictable. But can you guys talk a little bit about the patterns that you have seen in that regard?
Yeah, that is actually a great question. We're writing our book now, so we don't want to give too much away, but we are seeing a very, sort of prototypical pattern once kids start to fall into this indoctrination. So, they begin to, by the time they have told their parents, I am trans, or I think I'm trans, they've already been doing all of the things and interacting with with the members of the cult. They are already fully indoctrinated. Mm-hmm. So at that point, that is when your alarm bells need to be going off. It is not the time for watchful waiting. They're going to grow out of it. They've already been fully embedded in the cult. So that's the thing that I want people to realize. They will recognize things, like they'll start to change their appearance. Maybe they don't care so much about how they look. They may, girls might stop shaving. Guys may start to grow their hair out, not wash their face, not wash their hair. They really just start to become unkempt. They'll change their friend groups. Mm-hmm. They'll change behaviors that they're doing. They'll start to become allies or talk more about the queer community or LGBTQ community and want to participate in things. They will start clubs at school or become, members of clubs at school, things like that. Want to start being activists kind of publicly about this stuff. But that all happens before they come to us. We get a lot of parents who will come to us and say, I don't know when this began. And then Gabs and I will get the story and get them to start talking. And they start telling us the story about what happened over the last year, over the last 6 months. And we're like,
you didn't see that.
You don't know. You don't know when it began.
Didn't alarm you? Like,
Yeah. And it's, as you're living it and going through it as a parent, you don't see the alarm stage. You see sort of this evolution happening, and it's kind of slow. It's slow and gradual. You don't really get the alarm until they say, these weird things, right? These strange, I am this and I am that, really fully come out to. So you don't really see it. But when they start to tell the story, and they're saying it out loud to us, you start to see the recognition on their face that, well, maybe I did miss this as it was going.
And I think it's probably so easy for people to miss it, because it's kind of the same way that this stuff was pushed onto all of society. It's like, we had all these warning signals and we can look back now and say, oh, that, okay, we get it now. We didn't know back then because we weren't fully paying attention to it, not in the context that we look at it now. So what are some of the warning signals that people most often overlook?
In my experience, most people often overlook their child's their resistance to be a part of the family, or their isolation. A lot of people just write it off as, I know this is going to sound kind of silly and kind of stupid and even maybe a little offensive, and I don't mean to be, but they write it off as ADHD or autism or some other kind of, some other kind of mental health concern that their kid probably may or may not even really truly have. I mean, there are so many parents who come to us, and by the time we are able to help them to assist their children, they've realized that all the mental health stuff that they'd been worried about this whole time was wrong. It wasn't, there was nothing wrong with their kid at all to begin with. And they got them off the medications, and they got them into doing, to normal things. Now, that's not to say that that's everyone, because there are definitely some legitimate mental health concerns for some of these children. But if when there's a kid who's 12 years old and they just magically all of a sudden have Tourette's, yeah, that's a warning sign. And a lot of the parents will just kind of, brush that off. Or if a kid, is 13 years old and comes to you and says, I want to have breasts. A male child comes to their parent and says, I want to have breasts. And the parents are really thinking that this is a serious, mental health issue, that, their child really does genuinely want to have breasts. And I'm going, you think your kid, they just magically woke up one day and decided they wanted to have breasts? And some of this stuff, that the earliest warning signs are this adaptation of some sort of mental health problem. Mm-hmm. Okay. And a lot of people just, they actually nurture that, which further pushes the child down the path. And so I always tell parents to be very cautious about it. I mean, even some of my clients who look back on this now and go, I was such an idiot. In the beginning, they really did believe that once they got a diagnosis, that they could then say, okay, you're not trans, you're this. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then their kid says, but that means I'm trans. That is because I'm trans. And they're like, whoa, wait. We just, you're throwing me for a loop here. And so, the earliest warning signs and a lot of parents get this wrong, and they either just ignore it or they take the immediate wrong action, which is blaming it or trying to manifest some sort of mental health issue.
Yeah. And I will take that a step further too. So even if their child truly does have a mental health issue, a lot of times that is a symptom of something else that's going wrong in their life, something that happened that they're coping with, some change in their development that is causing them to want to cope with it in a different way. Some of these kids want to stand out and want to be seen as special. And so they get social anxiety, because they don't feel seen as something special, and then want to change their appearance and change their whole sex and all of that stuff. And so I think, yes, that's a warning sign, but I also think parents tend to use those mental health diseases or neurocognitive disorders like autism spectrum, Asperger's, which we don't say anymore, but high functioning. ADD is one of the common ones that we get. Oh, she's got ADD. She's got ADD. She can't do this. Or she's got sensory processing disorder. She can't do this. They tend to use that diagnosis as a crutch to not allow their child to grow and develop into an adult, fully functioning adult. Meanwhile, that kid, especially if they're college age, is holding down a part-time or a full-time job, got a full college, course load, and acing everything. And you're telling me that you can't deal with this social, emotional, psychological issue of them feeling like they're trans because of their ADD?
Well, and one of the things
yeah.
too is that, sorry to interrupt, but one of the things too, I think people may not put two and two together on, is that disability studies or crip theory is a subset of trans ideology.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
this idea of like
Yes.
glorifying mental illness, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's one of the weirdest things too, because you'll see a lot of these kids self-diagnosing with autism and then
DID.
you
Yeah.
don't need an official
Yep.
diagnosis to be autistic. I've seen presentations where they say that they call it autism gender. They say that having autism is a gender, and that all autistic kids are queer to some extent. They'll sometimes just completely fake disabilities they don't have. Like out in front of the Portland Ice facility. Yeah, in front of the Portland Ice facility, there's this girl who, you know, has all that. She looks very queer. Her hair is queer. She's like she was out there naked for several days, but like she goes around in a wheelchair, but she doesn't actually need the wheelchair. She does. She does not need the wheelchair. And so, and you know, we just saw, I went inside a zine librarians conference, you know, last week, and the entire closing keynote, which I haven't released yet, but which is hilarious, is all about disability theory. And it's all about these people, like, you know, glorifying their disabilities, and you need to bend the world to us, and you need to give us special attention. And it's like, you start listening to them, it's like, do you even have a disability, or are you just making all of this up to adhere to the theory?
That is happening. I mean, more and more, and it's getting exacerbated. And this is where I go into my spiel about therapy, because so many parents come to us, and the first thing they want to do is put their kid in therapy. And I'm like, if you put your kid in therapy, then the first thing that the therapist is going to do is try to figure out a diagnosis for something, and you're going to push them further down this path. I mean, and you know, there are still non-affirming therapists who still will entertain the idea of Tourette's or DID, which I don't believe in, but whatever, you know what I mean?
Oh, that's a whole other thing. Like DID is also a gender identity, by the way. And when you have DID, they can have all sorts of different genders within the one system.
That whole thing, that DID thing is so ridiculous. Every time somebody brings that up, and every now and again, the detransitioners will talk about merging their identities so that they can, you know, and all of this. And I'm just like, oh my God. Y'all.
You know, just like, as a side note real quick, I don't know if you remember this, and Nikki, you may not even know this. I once went undercover at a queer conference at the University of Colorado Boulder, where I literally saw a presentation from someone in person claiming to have DID, and they and multiple of their personalities were presenting in this, and they were saying that this is our gender. They called it system gender, or all of the different identities within the system. And there were multiple people in the room who were also claiming to have DID. I felt like I was surrounded. I got possessed by some sort of entity in that presentation. I'm not even making that up. Because you saw the person shifted their identities during the presentation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff. And so imagine you're, you know, 18 years old, and you're trying really hard not to be your Karen mother, and you live in Connecticut, and you know, you've had everything given to you in your entire life, and you're trying to pick a struggle. What better way to pick a struggle than to claim that you have DID and start, you know, manifesting, you know, Greek goddesses and things like that? I mean, like, this is how they're, you know, trying to differentiate themselves from their parents in this rebellious, you know, pushback against their families. And, you know, the unholy alliance between universities and Marxism, you know, just all of it has just laid the groundwork for anything for anything to be okay. And for, you know, the whole fetish and fantasy, the autogynephiles, the queer Marxists, the shooters, you know what I mean? Just all of it, to all have this, you know, conglomerate of crazy to push into really just ruin families throughout the country. in some form or another. And a lot of the parents come to us and they really do believe that if they take out the source of it, then it'll go away. And we always try to make the parents understand that they chose a weakness in your family. They chose a specific problem or a specific weakness that is in your family to attack in order to ruin your family. And once we get parents to understand where the weak link and the chink in their armor is, that's when we really make a lot of progress with them and build better and stronger families. I had to do it with my own daughter. I had to look at myself first before I was able to really, really work on my relationship with Danica. And when it started out, I was just like every other parent. This had been going on for a long time. I could not even begin to tell you where it started because I don't know. And all I know is that the changes, in December, she was wearing pigtails and petticoats. And then, by the following September, she was dressing like a rodeo clown. And, there were all kinds of problems that were coming up and things arising with her that I just realized this is not just some normal, teen angst, and it's not just, normal teenage behavior for even the oddest behavior. It's not any of that. And I had to come to grips with the fact that, I had done a lot of things wrong with my parenting, and I had to correct those things and start living a better life and a more, I hate to say more righteous life, but yes, a more righteous life, so that I could maintain the moral high ground to pull my daughter out of this madness.
Yeah. And I want to, sorry, I'll go to you in a second, but I really just want to emphasize this for people who again are not as familiar with Gabs's backstory, because I just do think it's really important to the work that both of you are doing. Gabs had to do this with her own daughter. The reason that Gabs has the understanding that she does is because this happened to her. And I remember when this happened, because I was there.
You were the first person I told.
Yeah. And you got to understand, and I really, I have an appreciation for the fact that it's got to be so difficult for parents to come to grips with the fact that, your parenting is part of the problem here, and you need to change the way you are parenting your kids. And listen, everyone does the best they can. No one wants to mess up their kids and all that. But there are certain things that you need to do once your kids get put into this, that if you don't do them, your kids are not coming out of it. And I know that Gabs had to make a lot of really tough decisions to include pulling her daughter out of school, to include bringing her daughter on a road trip where she did not have access to the internet for a period of time, to include constantly fighting with her daughter about taking the internet away, to include moving to a completely different fucking state to get her out of all of this. I mean, I'm sure there's so many other things that you had to deal with that I'm sure were not the most fun things, and it maybe tested the relationship that you guys had. But at the end of the day, everything that you did pulled her out of this ideology, and now the relationship is in a much better place than it ever would have been had you not done those things.
And I'm going to add, I want to add too that this is the part that I think we need to emphasize too. As a parent, I dealt with this issue in my family too. I'm not as public about it as Gabs is, but we dealt with it very similarly to Gabs, which is one of the reasons why I latched on to her, is because whoa, this makes a lot of sense, because this is what we did. We just didn't give it a name for anything. And so with my background as a pediatrician, having dealt with a bunch of kids, seeing families in their most vulnerable state, most people, don't realize I was an actual pediatric intensive care unit doctor. So every single patient I dealt with and family I dealt with was at their most vulnerable state. And meeting Gabs and being her apprentice, and then hearing her story, writing about her story, and then relating the process to, how we dealt with things in our family. It just really set off a light bulb to me, touched my heart, deeply, but it also really activated me to believe that there is a solution to this, because we both accomplished it in our families. But we're still good moms. You know what I mean? We made some mistakes, We continue to make mistakes. We coach each other.
We do.
By the way, so we coach each other. We're like, no, you messing up on this. You got to do this, like, and a lot of the principles that we use with our families in affirming reality, we actually call this guided growth parenting. So we've named our parenting strategies. Okay. So we're teaching authoritative parenting in a technological world. So kids can be technologically responsible and savvy at the same time. And Gab's termed these, sort of these phases, action phases. Together, we're calling these desistance action phases, and we tailor them to individual families. So this Affirming Reality is a personalized coaching program for families for us to be able to do this. And then we also teach families how to develop a core network of people, what we call a nucleus network, who can be supportive on top of, especially when they're single moms, like Gab's going through that, or live in a community where everybody around them is fully indoctrinated, including maybe their own spouse and, their other children. They need to develop and find a safe nucleus that they can be, have a support system too, because as parents, and a lot of people watching may not even have kids of their own, and it's easy to criticize people and say, how could you let your kid this happen to your kid, or how come you can't just do this? Parenting is a lifelong responsibility. There's always going to be something we say or we do that screws up something. We have a bad mood, and we get mad at each other with our adult kids and adolescent kids. But we have to bridge that relationship. So it is a continuous process that happens lifelong. So there's not one magic piece of sauce that we can give people and tell them, okay, this is what you need to do, and your kid's gonna snap out of it. This is a process that requires your full commitment and requires you to do some hard work, look at yourself in the mirror, just like we did, and examine things that you did wrong, play on the strengths that you do have, both you and a spouse and other adults in your life. It is winnable. It's something that parents can do. And we are the key. Parents are the key. And if we are intent on taking back our culture and taking back our society, it has to start with us as individuals, and then, in us as a family, in order to affect the community at large.
I think that people are so quick to want to shortcut these days, and I see this all the time with people in my audience. They're like, Karlyn, can you just make a 5-minute video explaining this to me? Like, no, I actually no, I can't actually, no. And it's like, and it's the same with this. It's like, I'm sure you guys get asked the question, like, well, isn't there just something I can do to get them to snap out of it? No, there's not, because this has been building for months or maybe even years up until this point. And it's kind of like, to make it just a really simple analogy, it's like losing weight, right? You cannot have a shortcut to losing weight. Talk about that, Gabs. Go ahead.
I do. That's the analogy that I use quite often. I mean, parents literally come to us and say exactly that. How do I make them snap out of it? And I say, honey, I've had parents come to me and say, my kid's going to school in 2 days. They're identifying as trans. How do I get them out before they start school? And I'm like, you want me to tell you how to get them out in 2 days when it took me 2 years to get my kid out? You want me to just tell you how to just make them snap out of it in 2 days so that they're going to be fine? And they're just like, well, I mean, yeah. I'm like, honey, this is not, I mean, we're in this society of the magic pill. Everybody can take a pill for something. And so now they think that, this has some sort of quick fix, but no. We have a lot of success, but the vast majority of the people who have come to me, and you already know this, Karlyn, hundreds of people have watched my webinar and still continue to do so to this day. And they'll watch it, and a lot of them, too many of them, will think that the process is too hard, and they don't want to do it until, of course, it gets to be really serious, and then they're way far behind the curveball, and they have a lot of work to do, a lot more work than they would have had had they started in the earlier stages. But I mean, it's not easy. I mean, me and Nikki, we re-traumatize ourselves all the time because we have to, we have to really dig deep with our parents a lot of the times. And even it tests us. We've been writing a book since January, and we're just, I mean, it is very difficult because there are a lot of moving parts to all of this. And it is hard to go back over. It is hard to relive this whole process for the both of us. And to live and work and take care of ourselves and all of that stuff. So, I mean, and even Nikki, she's been my apprentice for a year, and she's got her coaching certificate, and she did. I mean, she was so fantastic. I mean, there are some times where we're actually saying the same thing at the same time. We're responding with the exact same words at the same time, because this has become so uniform for us in seeing our clients and responding to whatever it is that they're telling us, right? But even Nikki, just recently, she had to we had to rethink some of the things that we were going to put in the book. For example, a lot of parents think that if they just are able to tell their children the truth about the medications, then their children will snap out of it.
Yo. This is like when people come onto my socialism streams and they're like, do they know that socialism is wrong for reason X, Y, B, and Z? And I'm like, you know what? Go tell them. I'm sure that's going to fix the whole problem.
Yes, I said that too. You can't just say socialism doesn't work and think that these kids who have, who are very, very nervous about the future, they don't see a path forward for them. The economy is not in their favor, and say that socialism doesn't work and expect them to believe you. They want to try it, and you have to have the right words to convince them otherwise. But
and you have to give an alternative plan that's actually going to palatable to them and something that they are going to get excited over and so that it can replace this foolish ideology, right?
Yes.
And so like you guys, your analogy is the weight loss, but for me, Gab's laughed at me. My analogy is to acne. You got that kid coming to you a month before prom or a month before senior pictures, and they got a face full of acne going all down their back and their neck, and they want the magic pill that's going to get rid of the acne. Well, no, this took months to develop. You have to start developing these habits to take care of your skin, what you put into your body, what you put onto your skin, all of these things, and this is going to clear up over time. That is how this works. And once it clears, you have to maintain your skin so that it doesn't come back and become a major problem again. So same type of deal. So people who don't have parents, who don't deal with obesity, have kids who don't deal with obesity, who are watching this is the process. It is complex, multifactorial, multiple steps to it, requires a long-term treatment plan in addition to a maintenance therapy.
And you would not believe, Karlyn, how many parents really they seriously, I mean, even now, I have parents who have been in the program who have adult children, and they will still fall into traps because they really do believe that once their child gets to a certain place that, and even Elon Musk, he tweeted about it a week or so ago. And he said, well, you should just be able to tell somebody facts and then they accept those facts, and they accept those facts. And I'm just like, that is not how this works. And like I was saying before, Dr. Johnson, she was, really happy to be able to, talk about the facts, right? And talk about the studies and things like that. And, for a few months, I would say, it just doesn't help. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help us at all. And she was like, I think it does a little bit, until we ran into a parent who fell into a trap when her daughter said, well, tell me what you really think. Yeah. And she started telling about all the facts and everything that she read. And I mean, I was like mortified.
Yeah.
Because this is that's the kind of trap that they will set right before they're ready to go no contact.
Yep.
And
They
Yeah.
want proof
Yeah.
that their parents are going to abandon them and don't accept them as
Yes.
who they are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so-
Our disagreement is whether the parents need to know the facts. That's
Right.
not whether the parents need to talk with the
to their kids about it. And that
because
was
absolutely no, that is absolute no. Anybody watching, do not bring
Do
up
not.
this. Don't try to scare straight your kid against this indoctrination. All you're going to do is push them away
I think
from you at all. Okay.
Let's just put a really fine point on
Yeah.
this. So sorry, because
Yeah.
I do think that this is actually a really important thing that people need to understand. You are not going to convince your kids by saying, do you know that you can't change your gender for reason X, Y, B, and Z? And the reason I just want to just really hammer this home is, again, I get so many people in my chat and so many comments, and I'm sure you guys see this as well, of people just really truly believing if we just teach them facts, then this will all go away. And it's like, there's nothing you can do to convince it. Not only is it not going to go away, you are actually about to make the problem significantly worse by clinging onto this dream that if you just calmly explain to them that you are a girl and you can't be a boy for a reason that's going to fix the problem. Because, and what you guys are saying, and I really just want to make sure people understand this, is that when your kids come to you and they say, oh, what do you really think? And you say to them, well, you can't go from being a girl to a boy for reason X, Y, B, and Z. That is telling the kid that you don't love them, that you are not going to affirm them, that you do not support them, that if they persist with this ideology, they're gonna be like kicked out of your house. And this is what the ideology tells them, by the way. The ideology tells them that your parents will not love you, your parents will turn their back on you, et cetera, et cetera. The kids are looking to see, are my parents going to support me, or are they actually going to kick me out of the house? And then the minute that you say to them, you can't actually be a boy, the kid's going to go, okay, well, that's it. And there's going to be no contact. And then you've got a whole problem that's so much worse than the problem that you had before.
Yeah. And if they're young enough and you're in a place where you're in legal jeopardy, they're going to go to school and they're going to tell their teacher or the social worker is going to get involved and your kid's going to be taken away from you. Like it is extremely serious. This is not something you play around with at all. So yeah, I mean, I think what parents really want to do though, once they find out, because this is what I did. When their kids says something weird to them about, sexuality or gender or whatever, they want to go and read up about it. Because for me, there was a lot of the stuff I didn't even know anything about it at the time this happened, and so I went to go read every single thing I could get my hands on to find out what was true. And then I was like, well, do I need to talk to her about this? And, the better part of me, I decided not to, which was very similar to this is what affirming reality is. I did not have those conversations with her because I knew it wasn't going to get me anywhere. All right. And later as I dove in and found out, and, having these conversations even online and seeing in exchanges online, you get into these communities and you see they are prepared for the parents to say this stuff and tell this stuff. They are ready for it. They have a rebuttal already and they have a plan for it. So you are wasting your breath and putting yourself and your relationship in danger by doing that. So.
And even potentially putting yourself in legal jeopardy as well. If you out yourself as a transphobe in the wrong state, then you really do run the risk of having your minor child taken away. I've had those phone calls in the middle of the night where, a police just showed up. We're jumping in the car. We're leaving right now. And that's scary. And it's still, despite all the EOs and all of the laws and things that have passed, you can't legislate that away because, and I talk about parallel language messaging. I talk about the language that they use. It's still illegal to neglect or abuse your child. So these states categorize it as neglect or abuse. And because so many parents will come to me and say, oh, well, we already checked. There's no laws against being against socially transitioning your child. And I'm like, are you insane right now? Even a lawyer said that to me. And I'm like, honey, they're not going to charge you with not letting your child transition. They're going to charge you with abuse. They're going to charge you with neglect. They're going to charge you with harm, or the at risk category, which covers, God knows what all. And it took that lawyer, it took that lawyer getting closer and closer to that situation, to that very situation, to make the decision to leave that state. Because, even though I had already, told her what was going on, so many parents even with the all the facts and reading all the books and learning all the stuff, Nikki had the presence of mind to not use that thing. But what I found is that most parents do use it, and they even use it with their friends and family to try to convince them as well. And all they did was put a great big giant target on their backs. With their friends and family in the school and people in the community, as a transphobe and a bigot. And so it's just like, having people who have been down that road and who know all the traps, all the pitfalls, the better course of action, all of that stuff, like we did not have. We did not have. I had to make a lot of mistakes, before I was able to get to the best way. And so having affirming reality to help guide you through that it makes people, it really does cut down on the stress and the tension in the family. And it
Absolutely.
really does cut down on the time that is spent in this. I mean,
I was one of those parents who did out myself in the school community. I mean, I sent a mass email to the entire private school, preschool, early childhood, all the way to 12th grade. The trustees, people in the entire state, journalists were starting to, reaching out to me about a letter that I wrote asking questions about about the ideology in the school. So, I did out myself, started a, parent group and all of this stuff, and, tried to have these educational forums and that, and it just didn't work. It didn't work. I learned that part the hard way, even though, and it got to my kids anyway. It got to their classmates, and they were like, "Mommy, why do you need to talk so much? Why do you need people to believe what you hear what you have to say?" And, and I had to learn that, that's not the way that's going to happen. It's not the way that people their minds are going to change. It's going to have to affect them. And then they're going to need to realize that they need help in a really, really realistic way. And so that's why I'm part of the Affirming Reality team, because I think we actually have the solution that works for families, and we are we can do it. We just need people to know about us.
and I definitely I want to help as many people know about you guys as possible, because I think you guys know I've always respected. I mean, both of you. I've known who both of you are for like years, Gabs, and I've known you, Nikki, for I think a couple of years now. We've been following each other on Twitter, so I'm familiar with both of you guys. And I think what you guys are doing is awesome, and it's so different than what a lot of other people are doing. And I think I do want to get to what parents can do in a second here, but I also wanted to say like, it kind of seems to me it's almost like people don't have like street smarts. It's like conservatives think that sometimes if they just present the facts of things, if they have like the book smarts, that's going to be enough, but they don't have the street
facts don't care about your feelings line.
And it's like, I think like when you're online and they're doing the typical owning of the libs thing, where they're like, well, men can't be women and and like all this stuff, and they're feeling really good and self-righteous about that. But unfortunately, owning the libs does not actually translate into real world results. No. And it's like, you have to have street smarts to know how this ideology perpetuates, what they're going to do, the different traps they're going to set for you. It's like conservatives seem to think that like their kids are just going to like accept everything you tell them, when it's like, no, the kids are already ahead of you, bro. Like the kids are like 9 steps ahead of you. They've thought about things you haven't even begun to understand yet. And so it's like to be able to know how to navigate these situations more from a real world perspective, rather than just this like, well, this is the way it is, and that's just the way. It just doesn't work that way. I just want to do a couple of super chats real quick, and then I want to get your guys' thoughts on what people need to do, like what families need to do when they find themselves in this position. We've got Fluid over on Rumble says most of the old gay Catholics switch to become Presbyterian or Methodist. Maybe that's true. I don't know about that, but I'll take your word for it. We have Jenny's getting inky with it. Says, reminds me of that family in Montana. I think it was. Yeah, that's a whole other.
That family in Montana. That family in Montana. What happened with them is a friend of theirs came to me and said, "Please, can you help my friend?" And I said, okay, well, send them to my email. So here's my email. Send, put us in touch with the email. And I saw that's Todd and Krista Kolstad in Montana. And their daughter was taken away from them and trafficked to another state. Yep. Because they would not affirm their gender. And we were able, at the time it was Affirming Reality Connected. We were all working together to help parents in these situations. Subsequently, the child was sent to Canada to be with her mother and taken away from her biological father and her stepmother. And they had to flee Montana because they were being activated against, and they are now in litigation with various different people. But subsequently, the judge had to dismiss the gag order that they put on the family to not talk about this publicly, which they violated. They had to take that off. They had to drop all the charges against Todd Kolstad because they had charged him with all kinds of different things. And that is in a red state with with a red governor. And the governor actually, the state government actually signed off on this child being their parents' rights being terminated. Like, wow. Over this. And it is just crazy. It can happen in any state. There's no safe state. So yes, Todd and Krista Kolstad, when I first talked to them, I could not believe their story. And I was so glad that I was able to put them in touch with the right people. And their story went international, and they were able to obtain legal counsel, to help them get through this. And they are still now fighting to get their daughter back, but also fighting against the departments of the state that activated against them unfairly.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize this. So if you ever heard about that story of that family in Montana, Gabs is the reason that you know about that story. Gabs is the reason that story got out there and that people were paying attention to it. And I think that's part of one of the things that you guys are able to do when it's necessary, which is to get a lot of media attention on these cases. And it's not necessarily about making anyone famous or internet clout or anything like that. It's you need media attention on these cases to shame politicians into doing things they wouldn't otherwise do. You also need to get them legal representation. You need to get them help. You need to get them support. And it's like sometimes the only way to do that is to shine a giant spotlight on it.
It is. And unfortunately, so many parents, they end up waiting until the situation is dire before they're ready to take that step. Yeah. And that, Todd and Krista Kolstad, that is exactly what happened to them. They trusted that they were going to be vindicated. And when they realized that they were not going to get any justice, that was when they decided to go forward.
Crazy. We got one more super chat here before we get to the what do parents need to do. James D says, what are your thoughts on the level of influence by the UN, specifically the WHO, on pushing trans ideology? Do you guys have thoughts on that?
Well, my answer to that is, look, this is a global indoctrination push. However, our focus is on fixing it. And parents have so much more power within their own families to take their kids back and claim their parental authority over all of these people. But they have to do it in a smart way. And too many people have not done it a smart way by outing themselves as transphobes. And in this particular case, we just talked about watching, waiting, being hopeful, that thing. You have to be very proactive about this and really fight for your kids. You have the ability to do it. Every single parent does. That's our hope. You just have to be willing to do the hard work and come at us with this. And, and honestly, look, we have a lot of parents that come to us after they've already gone to counseling. They're taking their child to counseling and to see a psychiatrist. We got one family that's paying like $750 per session with a psychiatrist to say, these are the things that are wrong with this child, but they're not fixing the ideology. It's a cultural and social problem. It's a family problem that parents have the ability and the authority to take care of and fix. So yeah, the UN is saying this, the WHO is saying this, the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying this, but they don't live underneath your roof.
Yeah.
They don't have the ultimate power. You do.
Yep. And we got Andre here saying, you hear that Republicans in red states, your own state's governor and government can allow socialists and communists and Marxists to take away your kids for eternity if not fighting on time. Yep, that's exactly right.
Absolutely.
People don't know how severe this problem is.
I live in Ohio. My state governor was actually vetoed the law that prevented medicalization of children, for this issue. But thank goodness we have a super majority state and we were able to override the veto. So a red state with a Republican governor was going to allow this stuff to happen. You cannot rely on these politicians to save your family. You have got to do the work yourself.
And I need to tell you why though too, because I think this is important. A lot of Republicans have trans-identifying children, or they know people who are trans-identifying. And a lot of them, I'm not kidding you, believe that this is a natural thing that has happened because of vaccines or because of poor health. So they literally believe that you can turn gay or you can turn trans if you don't have the right diet or if you don't have enough testosterone or if you don't have enough estrogen. So they're making excuses for their own bad parenting, and they're making excuses for their own ignorance to cultural issues by blaming it on something tangible, like by trying to attach this onto something real. And we've seen so many people who are conservative change their minds about all of this after they've seen and been exposed to more of the truth behind it. So you're always going to have those, and not to mention, Texas was the state that had the most gender clinics in the nation. And at one time, they had more gender clinics here in Texas than all of the other states combined, because, big pharma that was a Republican thing. And so they loved these medications and things like that were now being, they were making big money on. And so they weren't ready to stop this. In the beginning, they weren't ready to, they wanted to say, well, maybe we just need to keep an eye on it and do some more research. They weren't ready to just shut it all down, because it lost a lot of money for all of the pharmaceutical companies who are making these puberty blockers.
Not only that, you got nonprofit health systems, and Texas is a big state with a bunch of nonprofit health centers that are part of the academic community, and they are getting 340B kickbacks for some of these drugs. So that is a huge part of this. That could be a whole nother topic that we could talk about if we want to go down the money line and the capitalism line and all of that piece of it.
None of that helps in the family. So even the WHO, the UN, you can know all of that stuff. But I tell parents that one of the first things I tell parents is forget everything you know or think you know about this. Get out of the parent groups, get out of the ROGD parent groups, get out of stop reading those books, get out of that stuff, because they're telling you about the problem. They're not telling you how to fix the problem. And you need to learn more about the problem from the perspective of being a cult member, not the perspective of being someone who is out of the cult. You need to learn more about it as someone who is in the cult. And we teach parents how to learn the language. We teach parents how to talk to their children so that their children understand, and talk to their children so that they don't trigger them and out themselves as transphobes and bigots and all of that other stuff, and how to find people who are going to be who are going to participate in their child's health and wellness in a positive way, because so many parents really do believe, they say, well, I want my sister to be involved, even though she believes in, she believes in this, and she's, she's affirming, but they know she knows how I feel about it. And I'm like, are you insane? I mean, like, so yeah, I mean, all of the big broad stuff, that's all great, but it has no bearing on what you do inside your four walls and underneath your roof.
I mean, it's the difference between understanding on a conceptual level that there is a problem of some sort, and then understanding, okay, how do we actually solve or fix the problem? Again, it's like the difference between like book smarts and street smarts. And if you try to bring book smarts to a problem that requires street smarts to solve, you're not only not going to solve the problem, you're actually going to make the problem so much worse, because all you're going to keep doing is defaulting back to things that have no relation to actually fixing the problem at all. And it sounds like it's so similar to what I tell people about the left all the time, is they think they understand the problem because they see this clickbait on Twitter, or they see their favorite influencer did a show about Marxism, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, Glenn Beck doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to the funding of Antifa. like there is no universe in which what Glenn Beck said was correct, because he doesn't understand it from like a street smarts level. He understands it from like a conceptual book smarts level. And I do want to get into like what do people need to do about it. I got a couple more super chats, and one of the super chats gets to this question specifically. Oregon board, $5 at the door. I love it when people just give me money for just showing up in my chat.
Like, that's what happened to us.
With the Grinch avatar too.
Exactly.
Awesome.
It's like, man, and then we got Fizzled said, my son is going to college next year and is very level-headed, but I fear of him being exposed and falling into all of this. What advice can you give to help him from being indoctrinated? What a great and timely question, Fizzled.
All right, now look, first of all, let me tell you this. There is no falling into this. As we've been trying to relate to you, that children identifying as trans are indoctrinated. This is a full indoctrinated, and they choose this identity, okay? By, engaging with people who affirm them, in the trans cult, the internet, electronic devices, using other coping mechanisms. College is right with some of that stuff. If you, though, have a really strong relationship with your kid, they have a firm foundation of becoming an independent adult who can express their individual self with confidence, then you are on the way. Okay. But find out what's in their head now. I mean, try to get to know your kid, build a relationship with them. I think one of the biggest pitfalls that parents, or the mistakes that we see, is parents often believe that once their kid becomes an adolescent or adult, is that they still know them very well and they can predict everything they're thinking or everything they're going to do with something. Oftentimes they won't even have a certain discussion with them about something that's hard conversations, because they think it's going to send the kid down a pathway. You don't know how your kid's going to react. And even if they do react that way, you respond, and you respond appropriately, and you deal with it. Don't shy away from it and outsource that problem to someone else, or just completely avoid it. You have to be willing to confront it. But really, honestly, right now, take the time, get to know your kid, build a relationship with them, do things, find out what they like to do, what they love to do, what makes them feel confident. What is the thing that they see themselves doing in the world? What are they great at? Encourage them, strengthen them, give them skills, and make sure they have skills. Make sure they can change a tire, make sure they can pay the bills and budget, do all of these things so they can fully be independent of you at the time they need to be. And so they're not going to rely when things get hard, when they fail an exam, a midterm, or they're, failing a course, or they don't get selected for the scholarship that they want. you know that they can come to you when they're feeling vulnerable, and then two, they have tools that they can cope with in a healthy manner. If you are teaching that, you are winning this battle right then and there. But you can't predict it, you can't prevent it from happening. It's going to happen if it's going to happen. If your kid is susceptible and vulnerable and they're fully indoctrinated, it's going to happen. I'm sorry. Like it's not trying to be pessimistic. I'm trying to be realistic. Again, we're affirming reality here. Okay.
Yep. I'm of the mind, just don't put them in college. I'm of that. I'm of the mind. Look, seriously, you let them go to community college and stay home until they have a full-time job and they are paying all of their bills themselves, and not just paying their bills, but they also have had to put everything in their name, because so many parents will come to us and they say, oh, we don't help them at all.
Oh.
And then I say,
and then we get a list of things. Okay, what are you helping them with?
Yeah. and because they say, oh, they're so mature, we don't do anything for them at all. And then we go down the list and say, okay, well, so they're on their own phone plan. Oh, no. They are on our phone plan, and we bought them a phone and they just pay us every month for, and I'm like, that's not the same thing. I mean, you have to teach them how to exist without you if you
Absolutely.
are not
fully
there.
independent.
Yes,
yep.
Fully independent. They're paying for their own car. They're paying, because this is another thing. The parents will come to us and they'll say, well, I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know how they're going to buy a car for themselves. They don't have a job. And I'll say, okay, well, do they
need to get a job?
Yeah, I'll say the first thing I always say, because I've had this happen enough times to know that this is always the answer. So I'll say, okay, well, do they have any savings? Oh, yes, they've got $20,000 in savings. And I'm like, why the fuck are you paying for their stuff? Like, why are you paying for this? Because we said we were going to do blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's what the $20,000 was. You were saving that so that when they get to college, that you won't have to pay for that. And they will have to learn what having to pay for themselves means. Or they'll be on their car insurance and they're messing up the cars and all of this. And I said, well, make them get their own car insurance. Oh, well, they pay us for their car insurance. No, that is not the same thing. So I would say, let them go to a community college and stay home until they are 100% independent. And all of those parents who say, well, they shouldn't have to go to college and work at the same time. But guess what? Didn't you do that? Yeah, you did. So then they should have to do it too. Life is hard, and it's harder if you're stupid, like John Kennedy said. So make sure that they know everything that they need to know before you push them out into the world. If for nothing else, they just won't have the time or the energy to even be entertaining this stuff because adulting is hard.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that we do, the tricks of our trade that we do teach families is they don't, even if they are in college, and they're going down this path, and then they need to not have money to fund this path. And so if they got 20,000 in savings, 5,000 in savings, you need to find ways to help them spend that money on their lifestyle, on managing actual life, in order to keep them out of this. However, I am not like 100% don't go to college. Like Gabs. I think there's some kids who would do fantastic in community college. They're fantastic getting a trade, but there's some kids who really, really want to go into a professional career and do, want to go to college and have worked hard in their high school time, and can do it and can be successful. It is a case by case thing.
I do think it's one of those things, and I kind of wonder how you guys feel about this. It's like, okay, you got a kid that wants to go to college. Like, I know there was nothing that my parents could have done to talk me out of going to college. Like, I was going to college, and that was just the way it was going to be. Yep. And so, but like, I do think there's a place to have a conversation as, okay, if you're going to go to college, and this is actually what happened with me, not because my parents did this, but because I did this to myself. I'm like, I want a professional track career coming out of this. And so there was a lot of philosophy stuff that I was interested in studying, but I was like, you know what? I want to get a job someday. So I'm going to go to the communication school. And then there's maybe a couple electives I can dick around with, some philosophy courses or whatever. But like the degree is in the professional track, the communication school, like the pre-law school, if you want to be a lawyer, or like pre-med, if you want to be a doctor, or like engineering, or like you have some sort of plan to go along with the college. You're not just going to college just to go to college. Like there is a purpose to this exercise, right?
Sure.
And I think that where I see a lot of this stuff in colleges and universities, it's coming out of the sociology departments, or sometimes they have queer and gender studies, or it's like why are you going to college to study gender? You don't actually need to do that, and you're not going to be able to get a job.
We actually told our daughter that these are things that we are not paying for. Like we're not contributing to this degree and that type of thing, or this type of an education. You actually have to have a plan. And actually, the interesting thing is along these lines is when I was actually doing my getting my coaching certificate, I had to have a life coaching client. Mm-hmm. I used my daughter to do that, and I actually coached her to prepare herself to figure out her career path and how to budget to have a certain amount of money saved, by the end of the year, and all this stuff. Now, I am not going to say it's perfect at all. But that was part of our plan. Like that was part of our conversation. Like we ended up not going to any of those liberal arts, private institutions. She's at State University because that's what we came in our compromise. So again, it's individual. You got to have a plan. You cannot just let them go willy-nilly going off to some college and then get a, whatever degree. They need a track. Like it needs to be, it's not just we're going to college just to go to college and get the college experience. We're going to college because you need a job at the end of this. That is the whole point of going to college.
And if you ladies here, go ahead, Gabs, go ahead.
If you really truly look at the people who are continuing this past college, it's majority autogynephiles or people who are in the studies of it, who are actually making money off of it. So there are some autogynephilic men who will continue on with very good degrees. I mean, there are a lot of lawyers and doctors who are autogynephiles who will continue with their trans identity, politicians as well, those kinds of professions. But it's not very many women that are doing that. And the ones who go to school for some bullshit, that's the ones who continue on with this stuff. But for the vast majority of people, once they realize what real life is like, then it grows them up out of this rebelliousness, and they have to, seriously think about their real life and deal with their real life situations. So parents help them with that.
Two ladies here says, tell the kids to do college online. Listen, I am actually
doesn't do it either.
Oh man, so I'm a big fan of online college. I learned way more in the online college than I did in in-person college. I will tell you that. But I also understand for young people, it doesn't necessarily work. I think online college works good for more adult learners or things. Like I had to have a job, and so I did online college because I had to have a job, and it was the way it went. But I think when you're having just college age kids, 18, 19 years old, they want to go to college. Let me get a couple other things.
But it also doesn't free them of the indoctrination. Because I'm going to tell you, I got my coaching certificate online, and several of my online discussion coaching clients that are a part of my homework assignments that I had to do were trans identifying individuals. So you had to buy into the terminology.
That actually leads to a question.
That
actually leads to a question I would definitely wanted to ask you guys, which is about the role of the internet and how do parents have to handle the internet? Because the internet is where all of these ideas are propagated. You can find all sorts of crazy stuff on the internet. I remember one time I signed up on Reddit to just do an experiment. I kind of posed as a 15-year-old that was questioning whether or not I was trans or whatever. It took 15 minutes before some adult was in my DMs saying things that they shouldn't be saying. And it really, it was 2 Reddit posts and that was it. It was 15 minutes. And so it's so what is the role of the internet and what advice do you give parents about having their kids on the internet and things like that?
the groomers are just waiting for fresh meat. Like every single day, they are just waiting. And I bring this back because this is still happening. And I saw we had a case of this earlier this year, and that's transmaxing.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started seeing this, I think it was 4 years ago. A lot of people really didn't believe me when I would tell them about this, about transmaxing. And I told Karlyn about it, and it was a year before she actually could find proof of it.
Yep.
To be able to talk about this. And earlier this year, we had a family come to us, tell us about everything that was going on. And I go, transmaxing, that's transmaxing. And it was, I couldn't believe that it was actually still, a thing, because I hadn't seen it in a long time, but it is. And so the grooming, and you can go look up transmax, and maybe Karlyn will put a link in there somewhere.
If you want to see the whole transmaxing manifesto, head over to the Substack, look up transmaxing, make sure there's no kids around you when you look at this thing, because you're going to be shocked at what it is anyway.
Yes. So, I mean, when the internet, and I say devices just in general, it doesn't even matter if they're connected to the internet, because there's an addiction. So I am a certified recovery coach. Okay. And the addiction component of this is something that I recognize very early on, because I recognized it related to me as something similar to a gambler's addiction or a sex addiction or gaming addiction. Addictions that you have that don't require you to ingest anything or smoke anything, or you know what I mean. They're addictions to a behavior, and so all of that stuff starts with their devices. And so as much nature as you can get into your life, or as much kinetic things you can do, whether it's working out or learning about plants or learning about animals, you have to see the binary in all things when you do that. Even with my daughter, she really does love engineering. And so putting things together, putting the dishwasher together, putting the oven range together, things like that, installing those things, all of those things, there's even binary in that. You have this piece is a female piece, this piece is a male piece, and they go together, and all that kind of stuff. So as much of that as you can do to fill up the time is preferable. Even with older children, even with college age children, you go on a vacation, you go on a road trip where there is no connectivity. And then when you come back, you can have the discussions about how much lighter they were and how much healthier they look after having been away from their devices, because so many children, so many young adults are they're causing themselves to have anxiety and depression just strictly from all of the things that they are going through with their devices, being online, being on social media, all of that stuff. We even see it with ourselves. We digital detox and we have to tell each other when it's happening too, because sometimes we don't always see it. I will physically feel myself feeling worse and worse every day, and I'll have to say, okay, you need to go outside, walk around in the grass with no shoes on, go to the beach, get out of, get off Twitter, get off the internet, and go live in the real world.
And we coach each other to do that.
Yes, we do.
To get out and get it. Digital intoxication is a huge deal, and digital detox, it is something that actually the psychological community is aware of. So that is an important thing. Younger kids who are under your roof, you can find ways to do everything that they are doing online in person, in reality, with actual physical things offline. Now, I know there are some kids who have autism, and need some sort of like a routine type of behavior or automatic behavior. Some kids who are into robotics, who do kind of coding and things like that as a part of their hobby, well, you just limit the time that they're doing it. But there's always an alternative that you can find, something that they can do physically with their hands, their eyes, build. If they draw and paint, get them some paper, crayons, art, paint brushes, oils, those things. Do the stuff that we did growing up. We had to like force ourselves to actually go out in nature, do things, build things, create things, use our imagination, cosplay, role play, get costumes, all these types of things that you are doing online, do it actually in person. Go out into the community. If you're not a Christian, churches do still have activities for families, for kids and things like that you can be a part of. You don't need to be a church member to be able to do that, or feel like, and if you find one that's always trying to push in, the Christianity or the church on you, then find another one. I mean, because there's going to be some other ones that are out there to help you do things in the community, do volunteer things, but physically get out there. Go on nature walks, point out things. There's all kinds of activities in your local community that you can find to get things done. But the internet, that's a fantastic question. It's a big part of our program, is to actually detox people. And it is harder once you get into adulthood and you got kids going to school, and especially if they're online school, or doing, college courses where there's a heavy emphasis on using the computers and things like that. But as much as you can, encourage them and find activities that they can do that are using their physical bodies, their minds, I even noticed, so like when I write, there are times when I just go to my computer and I just like start writing. I'm much better at that. Like I'm much faster than that, but I've started writing notes down. I force myself to do that with my hand and a pencil and piece of paper, and I feel like I'm much more fluid, and my mind works a lot better. And so it's something you have to do for yourself as well, not just and Gabs, and that actually is precisely, you showed it in the beginning, Karlyn, that my account on Twitter and X is locked right now and it's private. That's a big part of the reason. Is because I was interacting with dumb people, and it was really getting to my psyche, and I needed to not do that anymore.
Yeah, so I understand completely. Like I was actually thinking about like the time, like several years ago, I got permanently banned on Twitter for a whole month because I shared a state government email address or something like that. Anyway, like the time that I was off Twitter, and I knew I was always going to get my account back. I was very confident about that, but I went through withdrawal. Like I went through physical withdrawal from not, and it was so stupid too, because I had other Twitter accounts. It wasn't even that I wasn't on Twitter. I was just under different accounts, and I still even got the physical withdrawal because I wasn't interacting with the same kind of like clickbait bullshit that I've been interacting with. It's just like these they will drive you insane, and if these websites will drive adults insane, like of course they're going to drive kids insane.
Yes.
Yep. Go to the library, get some books, read some books.
Don't be so quick about the library.
I didn't say participate in programs at the library, but go and get some books.
I have an idea about the
library too. I'm like, I ain't going to no library.
I didn't say go in the library and interact with the people. I said pick out some books and actually get physical books to read.
Actually, since we're talking about the library, I was going to bring this up later, but I'm going to actually be launching a program next year, and I want to tell you guys about it real quick, just because we're talking about it anyway. I'm going to be launching an initiative called Occupy Libraries, where I basically want to go around to the most leftist libraries in the country and do like anti-communist or anti-leftist presentations, and like actually just like, because I recorded a whole bunch of librarians talking about how they occupied the seats anytime a conservative had an event at the library, and so I'm like, all right, you guys want to play this game, then we can occupy your libraries as well. I would love to get you two like speaking at libraries and doing a whole big thing about this. I think that would get a lot of attention. I think it'd be very interesting. I'm just saying.
Because they can't kick you out.
Right, exactly. It's a public place.
And if they do kick you out, then I will sue their draws off. We need that money anyway. But I think that's a really good idea. I think that's a fantastic idea because setting up and having discussions at libraries is a fantastic way of activism, because those people are they're going to be vehemently against everything you say, but there's nothing they can do about it. And the people will come and occupy all the seats. I mean, this happened to a lot of people around the country. Nicole Sullis, had she was activated on against her libraries. There were several people in California as well who were active on against their libraries. They actually sued and won. And so I think the library had to pay them $30,000. But
really? Oh, I'm even more committed to this idea now. Oh, I can get $30,000 if they tell me no.
That's what I'm saying. You absolutely should do that, because the public libraries are funded by the government, and they can't shut your free speech down. So, I mean, there are other places where you can do it too. A lot of police stations in small towns have community rooms where you can go and speak, and they're not allowed to shut you down either. So, I mean, yes, occupy libraries. I think you should absolutely do that. And, I don't do as much activism anymore because I don't have the time, and quite frankly, I don't have the patience anymore.
Well, we'll come back to you, Gabs, because I happen to know there are some activist librarians down near you right now.
And the Library Association, all the top library, they done already blocked me on Twitter. But I'll go to my local libraries and I will have an Affirming Reality seminar in a heartbeat. Because I believe that would definitely ruffle some feathers. They'll call me all kinds of what do they call us, Nikki? What do they say to it? What do they call us? Conversion therapy and all that stuff. Yeah.
I held an event with my parent group. I held an event in a library. Actually, the library was the only place that we could get that would take us.
Because they're not allowed to tell you no. Like they're not allowed to tell you no. So
I'm gonna make propaganda posters saying the conversion therapists are coming. Occupy library. That's gonna be great. We're gonna piss them all off. All right, I got one more question for you guys. I want to thank everyone.
Okay, right.
I always got to be poking the bear.
Another reason why my X account is locked down. I can't. I'm trying to keep. I got to keep a job, Karlyn. I got to pay some bills.
I think it's kind of like for me, and I know everyone has their own approaches, but I'm like, you know what? Just embrace it. They're going to call me a fascist. They're going to call me. They're going to call me all these. Yeah. Fine. I'm a fascist. Yeah. Okay, fine.
I don't care about the names. I don't care about when you mess with my money. That's an issue. When I can't survive.
Yeah. Well, I do want to take the rest of these super chats. We got James D here with a very generous super chat. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, knowledge, and most of all, hope there's a way to fight back. Thank you for this, Dr. K. So informative. Yes, there's always a way to fight back. You just might have to do some things that you don't want to do and, put on your big boy pants and just do them anyway. Two ladies. Thank you, ladies. My girlfriend from UK has a daughter who is transitioning to. The leftists there are embedded so deeply, so much. Liz is afraid of talking to her daughter about this stuff. Thank you for your advice. Thanks to ladies for that.
Send them our way. Affirmingreality.com.
Yep. Absolutely. We in Australia, England, Spain.
Yep. We got a client we're seeing next week from Australia. All over. Yep.
We got Effectual Insurrection over on Rumble with $17. Well, pay to fly our speakers out. We knew it was a great idea, Dr. K. Thank you, ladies. Yeah, we're gonna get some fundraising because I have a nonprofit now. So I'm gonna get a big ass grant. People can make tax deductible gifts. So you can just start a nonprofit and that's just like a thing. I didn't know that, but apparently
you can. Yes, you can. I've started a couple, but you got to get people to. You got to get people to actually fund it. And then the fund and the donors, they like you to say certain things or not say certain things. And then they stop giving you money. So
I've gotten some fundraising. I don't have a whole lot, but I do have some so far. So I'm taking it slow and hopefully,
awesome.
I'm going to find a millionaire to fund this. That's the big goal. We have our last question for today. Thanks for the show. If you have a level-headed teen who has a classmate who identifies as trans, would you let your teen be friends with that child? I think that's a really interesting question. What do you guys think?
Hell no.
No.
Hell no.
Yeah.
My daughter is she's totally turfed out now. But I just no. And the reason why is seriously because that teenager, even level-headed, they're still asking us to affirm a lie.
Yes.
And so, no, I don't. I mean, and my son is dating someone now who calls himself non-binary, but he knows as soon as he steps in my door that does not exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't that
yeah.
funny? Is the identity comes back as soon as there's a mom there that's not willing to take your kid.
Yeah, I mean, the issue here is what you're doing. You're teaching them is that it's okay to affirm some people and not affirm others.
Right.
And if the child decides that they want to transition at some point or whatever, and then change their identity, then you've already accepted this other individual's ability to do that. So how can you tell them no? All right. So you have to be realistic and affirm realistic and the reality at all times. You can't just, give it to some and not to others.
And whenever it comes back to you, the question then becomes, why were you so accepting of that other person, but you're not accepting me, you're rejecting me. And I mean, and I'm going to tell you, I don't care how level-headed your kid is. Any kid can be susceptible to this, any kid. Yep. So, there are still conservative people who are falling into trans ideology just because they're trying to be inclusive and trying to be supportive of another. So I would say absolutely not. But the other thing is that they learn other maladaptive coping strategies that are also not good. It's not just the gender ideology. It's also other things like anorexia and bulimia and cutting and all of these other issues that start coming up. Drug use and alcohol use and cutting school and all of those things that a lot of parents don't understand that also go along with this. It's not innocuous. It's not just silly costumes and, funny and ridiculous nicknames. It is a maladaptive coping strategy, and it would be akin to allowing your child to be friends with a drug addict.
Yes. And friends, you have to be, let's just be clear about what we mean by friends. I mean, like having social interactions, with that person with the intent to, be a supportive ally to that person is kind of what we mean here. Mm-hmm. Are they allowed to be respectful of other human beings? Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that's what you're teaching them, to be respectful and loving and, and kind to people as people. Who they are, but being friends is a completely different thing. So,
yes.
No.
So and I would also add this, and this brings it back full circle. The allies are a lot more violent and a lot more aggressive than the actual trans identifying person, because they feel like they are protecting their very life. So one of the very first things that we do after extraction and detox is to eliminate the influence of allies, is because as long as an ally is present, then the trans identifying person will never get out from under their boot. And so, even if they want to, they can't bring themselves to leave the gender identity behind, because they've got this cheerleader in their ear all of the time, affirming them. And you don't want your child to become a part of the gender cult in any respect, but you certainly don't want them to become an ally. They are the worst.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all the time you guys have spent with us. I mean, the last couple hours has just flown by for me. I feel like we could have kept going for a while, but we'll just have to save that for future conversations. You guys are welcome back anytime you want to come. Just let me know, or I can reach out to you guys as well. I would love to keep this conversation going, because I do think it's really, really important for people to be aware of this ideology. I think it's really important that everyone start hinging back into reality with how to actually solve the problem, not just putting platitudes online and stuff like that. I want to just give you both a chance, let people know where they can find you, any announcements you want to make, anything you want people to know. Nikki, let's start with you and we'll have Gabs wrap us up.
Sure. Yes. Okay. Just want everybody to we want to emphasize that the indoctrination is the problem. It's the harm. The social transition actually destroys not only the individual that's going through this, but it destroys families and communities. But I'm always positive. Actually, my Substack is called There's Always a Solution, because I believe there's a solution, and affirming reality is we can kill the ideology with strong parents, strong families. So please just share affirmingreality.com. Find us on X at at affirming real or affirm real. Sorry, my gosh, I'm X. You'll find us. Yep, at affirm real, and share our stuff, and then just spread the word about us. That's it. So thanks so much, Karlyn, for having us on. For sure, we love to tell about our work. We're really excited about it. We really care about these families and want to see this end.
Awesome. And Gabs, where can they find you?
You can always find me on X at Gabs Clark 5, all the social medias at Gabs Clark 5. You can also again hit up at Affirm Real on X. And you can always visit our website. I encourage every parent to visit our website, set up a 15-minute consultation. It's free. It helps us assess whether or not we will be a good fit, and then we can work from there. The process is not, it is very difficult, but almost all of our families really get into it and realize that it's a lot more fun than they thought it was going to be, because a lot of this is bringing their families together, their whole families. And I've helped people in as little as 1 month and one session, and pull their child back. And I've even helped people who have transitioned their own children, not knowing that it, not thinking that it was a bad idea until much later, and help them pull their child out of it, out of social transition, even after they transition themselves. So it doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter how old they are. Even if you have a child, I've helped parents who have children in their 30s. So it doesn't matter how old your child is. It doesn't matter the situation. It doesn't matter what you're going through. If we can, we will do everything. We will do our level best to create a plan that works for you and your family. And awesome. You can go to, what is it? affirmingreality.com is right there on the screen.
Yep.
Awesome. And Nick, I apologize for missing your super chat earlier. Gabs, good seeing you again. Hello, Miss Nikki. Thank you, Nick and
Hi, Nick.
For that. Well, again, ladies, thank you for coming on the show today, and please keep me up to date on everything that's going on. I would love to be able to, platform you guys anytime you want to. I think that everyone really enjoyed the chat, so we appreciate all the work you're doing, and thank you for sharing that with all of us. Awesome conversation, awesome stream.